Hey everyone, welcome to my first round recap from the Biel Chess Festival. Just finished my game about 45 minutes ago, and it was a fun game to start the tournament. Coming in, I was playing Kala Kishan Udipi from Switzerland, and pretty young kid. I think according to his FIDE profile, he was born in 2010, so always have to be careful with these young teenagers. They can definitely be underrated. And I really didn't have much time to prepare for this opponent because pairings went up about 10 minutes before the round started. So I decided to just play a London opening, as you can see here. Just going back, I played d4, d5, bishop f4, and after knight f6, e3. And one of the reasons I played this was because I figured that my opponent would not have had much time to prepare for me, and the London is probably one of my strongest openings, at least one of the openings I'm most knowledgeable about. So yeah, I figured that why not go into it and see what my opponent does in response. And he played one of the main lines after c5, knight f3, e6, knight bd2, and bishop to d6. This is somewhat of a trendy move order, and white does have to be a little bit cognizant of black's idea in this line. Because if I play the most natural move, bishop g3, and this is what I used to play for many years, then black has a very annoying idea is to play queen c7 and then very quickly play knight bd7 and e5. And this is one of the lines that is known to completely neutralize the London system. And if white just plays naturally, let's say c3, castle, bishop d3, knight d7, castle, after pawn e5, I think it's pretty much accepted that black has equalized, and very often black can fight for an edge from this position. So I was aware of this idea for black, and I decided to try and steer the game into somewhat uncharted territory. And rather than playing bishop to g3, I play definitely not a main line, bishop to b5 check. And the point of this move is to essentially provoke black to play knight c6. This is really the only logical move in the position. Black can't really play bishop d7 because it obstructs the queen from defending the bishop. I would take, and after takes, white can take and win a pawn. So yeah, after bishop to b5, my opponent does play knight c6. And in this moment, I was in somewhat of a crossroads because I did remember preparing this position about 3 years ago during the tournament in Gibraltar. And for that tournament, I did prepare what I think was a novelty at the time as the castle in this position. But during this game, I couldn't quite remember any of my preparation, because after castling, there's a lot of branches. Black can take on f4, black can castle, black can take on d4, probably other moves as well. And when we got to this position after knight c6, I decided that I would just try and transpose into a different line than the London, and I started with a move bishop to g3. And this is already different compared to what I showed previously, because black's committed to c6 with the knight. And if black tries queen c7, then I can take the pawn on c5, black can't take back because of the pin. And basically what I was hoping for after bishop g3 is that black would castle, and then I can play c3. And this would transpose into one of my favorite lines in the London, and that's what happened in the game. After castling, I played pawn c3, and we got to a position that I'm very familiar with. Usually this comes from a different move order, and if we just go back, I'll show the most common move order this comes from is if black plays knight c6 first, I would play c3, bishop d6, bishop g3, castling, and this is a very well-known London position. Probably one of the most common lines from the London, where white usually plays bishop to d3, the main line, but bishop e5 is a very tricky secondary move that white can play. So we got to this position, but from, yeah, just a different move order after what I just showed, pawn c3. And after I played pawn c3, my opponent took his first extended think of the game, which I was very happy to see because it's pretty clear that he was not prepared for this position. And after, about 9 minutes of thinking, he played the move a6, which is one of the most natural moves in the position. But as we're going to see, it walks into a pretty uncomfortable situation for black after I take on c6, black takes back, and I play the move queen to a4. And this is a position I've had many, many times in online games. And it looks a little bit innocuous at first, because white has conceded the bishop pair, also helped arguably strengthen black's center, and it seems like, okay, black should easily be able to defend the pawn on c6, and then have a fine position going forward. But the thing about queen a4 is it's a really sneaky move, because it actually has two threats. And what happened to my opponent is he acknowledged the most obvious threat, and he played the move bishop to b7, simply defending the pawn on c6. But he did not acknowledge my other threat. If we just go back to this position, my additional threat is to take the bishop on d6. And after queen takes e6, I can play queen a3 and win the pawn on c5, because it would be pinned and attacked twice. And essentially that's what happened after he played bishop e7. I take his bishop, he takes, I play queen a3, and I pretty much just blitzed out these moves because it's a position I've had a good number of times online. And yeah, once we got here, I was feeling really good. The pawn is pinned and white is just winning a pawn. He does try to defend it with knight d7, but then I very simply play knight to b3, and the pawn is still pinned and attacked 1, 2, 3 times, only defended twice. So I was feeling very good here. And yeah, he tried to muddy the waters with pawn e5, but I think this move really just helped me simplify matters, because I take on e5. After he takes, I take, he takes, I take, and I just won a clean pawn, and black is left with a really bad bishop against a really nice setup from white. I have a nice kind of grip on the dark squares, ideas of knight to d4 coming. And going forward from this position, I really don't think my opponent had much hope in the game. Maybe he could have tried queen g6 instead of queen takes e5. I think I was just going to castle and still probably eventually target the pawns on the queen side. So yeah, the position was just really good for white from early on. So let me show what happened. After I won the pawn, he went for the move f5, trying to orchestrate some counterplay. And here, yeah, it seems most natural for white to castle, and maybe I should have played this. I decided to start with the move knight to a5, just to try and put immediate pressure against the bad bishop and the backward pawn on c6. And after rook a b8, I castle, and yeah, everything's pretty much under control for white here. My opponent went for f4, but after takes and rook a e1, I have initiative, I have the material advantage, and I have the positional advantage as well. So yeah, it was just a very feel-good situation for me. He played rook e4, we trade on e4, and then I played the move queen to a7. So just attacking the rook, attacking the bishop, and this move wins more material. Doesn't quite win a full piece because he defends his rook, and after I take, he plays queen c7, pinning my knight and winning back the knight, but I do grab an extra pawn with queen takes a6. Now, one funny thing I do want to mention is that during the game, I was considering playing rook e1 with the idea that if he takes on b7, then I can have the move rook e8 to deflect black's rook away from defending his queen. And I briefly considered this line until I realized that he can just take my rook and say, oh no, my queen. If I take his queen, then he checkmates me on the back rank. So it's good to be still awake and conscious and not blunder material or blunder checkmate. So instead of going for unnecessary rook e1, I just snag another pawn. And here I'm up 2 pawns, and I think I'll just zoom through the next several moves. I defend the pawn on b2, and then, yeah, just keep improving rook e1, throw in the check on d3, throw in another check on e8. I did want to try and exploit the king, but I figured that there's not an immediate clear way to do so, so I just drop back with rook e2, keeping the b2 pawn defended. After queen d7, I play b3. He plays rook b8. I play queen e3, making sure he can't even try to challenge the e-file. Always happy to trade down into a king pawn ending. So he waits with rook b7. I play h3, making Luft for my king. After rook c7, I keep improving. Queen c5, rook c8, a4. And simple plan is to keep advancing on the queen side. He tried rook a8. I play a5. He plays rook b8. I play b4. And now here he did try to undermine my pawn chain with rook b5, queen d4, and c5. But the problem for black is I just snag the pawn, and this is a good transformation for white. After he takes on a5, I play the move c4. And now this not only prevents rook a1 check, but it also attacks a pawn, which is pinned to the queen. And yeah, the game just lasted a few more moves. After queen c6, I take on d5, he takes on c5, and of course I could take the queen and go into a winning rook ending up 2 pawns, but white actually has forced checkmate here with the move queen to f4. And yeah, there's no way the king can hide. He actually resigned in this position, but if he tries running, then I have rook e8, king h7, queen f5, e6, and queen f7 checkmate. So yeah, it was a pretty smooth game, and I think this whole game was really determined by my opponent being unfamiliar with the opening and walking into this London opening trap stemming from the early bishop b5 and queen a4. And I think this is a very valuable lesson, not only for my opponents, but hopefully for anyone that plays against a London opening, to be aware of this line and know what to do if you ever encounter this position as black. And I did chat with my opponent after the game, and yeah, he told me that he wasn't so well prepared for this opening. And I think if I had this position as black, I would go for the move bishop to e7, which does look a little bit strange and counterintuitive, putting the bishop on what looks to be a more passive square. But the idea is very simply to play knight h5 and try and snag the bishop pair and prevent the bishop from coming to h4. And if we check this in the master's database, bishop e7 is the second most played move and actually scores decently well for black. Black wins more often than white wins after this move. So yeah, definitely an opening that my opponent should be better prepared for. But yeah, overall, really no complaints with the first round. And it's very nice having one game a day, especially having played Madrid recently, where there were a good number of days with 2 games in one day. So I'm going to enjoy a nice evening of maybe some Thai food and some sleep. So thanks everyone for watching. If you have questions, do leave them below. And just friendly reminder, every day, Jonathan Trance will be taking over my Twitch channel to commentate my games. So you can watch live on twitch.tv/IamRosen. Games take place at 2 p.m. Biel time daily, which I believe is 7 a.m. Central Time. So stay tuned, and I'll see you guys soon.